You ever do something so stupid that you don't even realize that you did it until it's been done? Well, that's where I'm at today. Only my day started yesterday. You see, yesterday it was 72 and sunny. It's a beautiful day to make a repair out front on the driver's door hinge of the daily death trap. So that's what I did. All right, so later today we're gonna start renovating the sound trailer, and we're gonna make a food truck out of it, or a food trailer. I don't know if you guys will be interested in that. Let me know in the comments if you want to watch me do that, because it's going to take away from some of this other stuff that I'm doing around here. But before we start taking anything apart on this door, I figure we need to take a look at the door and make sure as to how everything is set up and what's going on with the door. Now, first and foremost, hopefully you can see this, I don't know. This gap right here, this gap seems really big. So I went to every other truck on property and I looked at it to find out. Now, the reason I say that this gap is too big is because the bushing has fallen completely out of the hole, and that's what's led to this metal on the hinge becoming basically paper thin almost. Not that there's a lot more metal on the original, but that's too thin to work with, and the bushing's going to slide over, so we got to repair this. But see how it looks sort of like it's got a hat on it, a lip? That has fallen completely out because that gap is so tall, and that made me think that there was a problem with the hinge placement, or the hinge was bent or something like that. But when you inspect this one, this piece of metal is all the way up against this piece of metal, and it's because the top edge, or the hat version, or the hat portion of the bushing is worn completely out, which allowed this to drop down all the way down to here, which then created too big of a gap here and allowed that bushing to fall completely out, and then the pin just rubbed up against the actual hinge to the point that it's more than just oblong, it is way too big of a hole. But we've got a plan, and we got to take basically we're going to take this door off, and we're going to replace this part of this hinge. So let's see how it works. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. I'm probably going to end up in the way. Now, we can take this hinge out by simply popping it out. But honestly, I've got the tool. I think it was like 15 bucks at AutoZone. Let's see if we can get this thing to tighten up. This is way better if you have a wrench with a ratchet in the end of it, but this particular tool is metric, and I don't have a ratcheting combination wrench in metric. I bet I will pretty soon, because this is a pain in the butt right here. I learned that on the other door. Now, the reason you want to have this little tool is because you want to keep that compressed this whole time. Do not take it out of the tool until you go to put it back in, because it's going to be a pain in the butt if you do. Next thing we're going to do is support the door with a floor jack, just enough to take the pressure off the door. Yeah, it might be a little too far up. There we go. Got to get that pin, that door lined up proper for the pins to come out easy. If a door ain't lined up, them pins are going to be hard to get out. Of course, before you get started on this, make sure you take out the little clip that keeps your pin from coming out. Duh. Come on. This isn't real hard to do. It's just pain in the butt. More importantly, it's hard to do this and give you guys a good view of it. So, I don't know. Got helicopters over my property. Apparently, they're looking for some pot farm. I don't know. They're in the wrong spot. I knew that. Well, the Holmes County Sheriff's Department is totally screwing with my video. So they're only like 300 foot off the ground. Anyway, we'll come back to it. It's loose, it wiggles, it's just hung in that bushing, which I think is turned a little bit sideways. And the bushing itself is what's got it bound up. What I need is a door pin that's twice as long so I can tap up through the hole, but oh, finally. Ah, good night. All right, so I'm gonna save you guys about 45 minutes of me beating on that top door pin. The pin itself was so rusted up it wouldn't go through the holes in the bushings and what have you. Eventually, I just got good and pissed off and took the Sawzall to it. Done. Next. So after I figured out how I was going to make this repair, Joe and I loaded up, went to the junkyard. I found an S-10 with a completely rusted out bottom half, and that makes for a good donor vehicle. So I cut the hinge ears off of the donor vehicle. That allowed me to find one that was not worn out on the end so that we could weld it in to replace the hinge ears on the death trap. I have no idea what happened to the video of me cutting these ears off of the death trap, so I'm just going to tell you about it. Basically, I drove the bushing out, then I squared up the cut on the ear, and we're going to use this as a representation. I took the ear of the hinge on the truck and laid the new one in, and just like Clint pointed out, this edge is not worn. It's this edge that gets worn out. So I made sure that the donor piece was lined up on each side, and the hole on that edge was lined up with the original factory hole. At that point, mark it here, cut it, and once this is gone, weld that into place. Remember, kids, cut-off wheels are for cutting, not for grinding. Alright, now, is that going to line up proper? I think it will. I guess there's only one way to find out. Turn that wire speed down just a little bit. Get that C-clamp out of the way. Now, these are Dorman part number 38407, and they do not care which one goes on the top and which one goes on the bottom, because the pin is the same size all the way through it. Now, that being said, some of these replacement pins have a pin that goes in the end, but these have these little clips that are pre-installed right here. You can look at it and tell a lot of times whether or not it's a factory pin or an aftermarket pin because of that fact. I don't recommend flipping your door up like this without putting a towel underneath it, but let's be honest. We ain't worried about this paint. Done. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but yes, I did put these bushings in the freezer. Yay, and it didn't fall apart. That's where I tripped over my floor jack. So far, my battery has died. I've tripped over my floor jack. Knocking my camera around. I've torn up my tripod, if you can call it a tripod. It'd help to have a clean work area. Let's see. I know I'm blocking your view. You can't see jack back there, can you? Now understand, I've just got that bottom pin in place for the sake of holding it still so that we can get the top pin done. This is sort of useless. I mean, you guys can't see crap. It's nothing against you. It's my fault. Oh yeah, that one's good. Oh no, it's not. It busted the son of a... So let's have a physics lesson. I got one of the old bushings. Obviously it's worn out. Hope you can see it. I can't see the screen. There's a couple of these door pin replacement videos online tell you to put the bushings in the freezer. And I did. The purpose for putting the bushings in the freezer is that it shrinks the bushing so that you can drive it into the hole easier. And that's true. But what those videos don't tell you is in the process of shrinking the outside of that bushing, you're also shrinking the inside of that bushing. And if you're using a Dorman part, which has a little clip that has to go through that bushing, you don't want the inside of that bushing to be smaller. So when you tap it on a hammer, a frozen piece of metal will break easier than a warm piece of metal. Warm piece of metal might stretch. Frozen piece of metal, snap. So what has happened here is totally my fault. That bushing has broken because that piece of clip on the side of the pin that's supposed to keep it from pulling back out did not go all the way through the bushing. But for now, we're going to ride with it. We sort of have to until we can replace this pin again. Son of a... The key to it whenever you put it in the freezer is get your bushings installed, let it warm up before you put your pins in. Body line lines up pretty well. Don't have any complaints about that, but there's a couple of other issues. And I didn't really point that out. The door is stuck out just a little bit. Now I can push on it, it'll go in. So, first problem I had was that the plastic wrap that wraps around this part, this plastic, I ain't put the spring back in it. I gotta do that. Anyway, the plastic wrap here was all kind of shredded and it wouldn't open whenever you tried to pull on the door handle. The next problem is this bull crap right here. Yeah, buddy. So this is too far this direction. It needs to be slid back so that it'll close properly. So let's stop right here. Did you catch that mistake? Because it was right here. I installed these hinge pins backwards, upside down, incorrectly, wrong. So now today, I get to fix that mistake. But I've got a whole list of stuff I need to get done before I can start working on that. All right, so I made a list of everything that needed to be done today, and I'm checking them off as I go through the list. And apparently we are right here. But that's what we're trying to get to. Maybe it's that. I don't know. Now you might be wondering, why do we need to play Tetris in the garage? And it's a pretty simple answer. Yesterday was 72 and sunny. Today, 38 with rain. 38 doesn't seem that big a deal to my buddies up north, but when there's a 40-degree temperature difference every other day, it's hard to get used to any one type of temperature. So let's get this truck pulled in the garage and see if we can fix this mistake. All right, so you've already watched me do this one time. There's not much point in you watching it again, so we're just going to time-lapse it. And the simple fact is that make sure you put your pins in proper. The bottom pin goes in from the top side of the hinge. The top pin, however, goes in from the bottom side of the hinge. And honestly, that's always confused me. But in the process of putting this all back together for the sixth time, I figured out exactly why that is. And it's actually pretty simple. You see that part of the pin that's sticking up over the hinge right there? If it were sticking down, it would interfere with the spring. If you don't have a spring, that's not a big deal. But if you intend to have a spring installed, that pin's got to stick up, and that's why it's backwards. Granted, it's backwards, but it's backwards with a purpose.